Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Something's been gnawing at you, subtle, unspoken, a discomfort you can't quite name. You sense it in conversations, in relationships, in patterns that keep repeating themselves with certain women. You watch as some collapse under pressure, demand more than they offer, or retreat into a childish bubble when life doesn't go their way. They don't evolve. They expect you to adapt to their emotional chaos, and when you don't, you're painted as the villain. If you've been manipulated, emotionally drained, or scapegoated, then you already know. Immaturity isn't harmless. It's not a cute quirk. It's a psychological prison. But before you think this is a blame game, understand, this isn't about judgment. It's about clarity. Because emotional immaturity in women isn't random, it's a coping strategy. A psychological mask forged in fear and hardened by repetition. A fear so deeply embedded that even the woman carrying it doesn't see it for what it is. Carl Jung and analysts like him spent decades exploring this through the lens of feminine archetypes. The girl, the princess, the wife, the sorceress. Each one is a snapshot of a soul caught in its own loop, its own defense mechanism. But why do so many women stay stuck? Society, that's why. We've wrapped the female experience in idealism as if women are naturally wiser, gentler, emotionally superior. But the truth? The female psyche, just like the male psyche, is littered with shadows. The only difference? Those shadows often wear perfume, innocence, fragility, sweetness, all can be masks. Ever seen a grown woman throw a tantrum that would embarrass a 5-year-old? Ever noticed how, when something goes wrong, the story never ends with her taking ownership? The villain is always someone else. Her ex, her father, patriarchy, karma. That's the hallmark of arrested development, a stubborn refusal to take responsibility. Now let's look at Jung's archetypes, starting with the most obvious one, the girl. She doesn't want to grow up. She's still waiting for someone to play daddy, to protect her, pamper her, pay for everything. Her innocence is strategic. Her tears are weapons. Her worldview is shaped by the delusion that someone owes her something just for existing. And society, it applauds her, rewards her, protects her from consequences. But when the real world comes knocking, she breaks. Then comes the princess. This isn't innocence, it's entitlement. She believes life should give her love, luxury, and happiness without the grind. And when life inevitably says no, she doesn't adjust. She implodes. She rages at reality for failing to bow to her fantasy. And every obstacle becomes a personal attack. But the most dangerous form? The sorceress. This is where immaturity turns venomous. No longer fragile, no longer naive. She's calculated. She doesn't want love. She wants control. Her tools, seduction, guilt, chaos. She won't argue. She'll manipulate. She won't grow. She'll shape you into what she needs. The sorceress doesn't avoid maturity because she can't handle responsibility. She avoids it because immaturity gives her power. And here's the part nobody talks about. This isn't just about individual behavior. This is a collective wound. For centuries, society has infantilized women, rewarded helplessness, romanticized hysteria, told them vulnerability is divine, that a woman's strength lies in being rescued. But that script comes with a curse, because the moment you refuse to grow, you lock yourself into a life where you always need someone else to survive. So what happens to the woman who chooses the hard path, who refuses the comfort of the child, and embraces the weight of adulthood? She becomes dangerous, uncontrollable. She's labeled cold, masculine, unlovable. Because a woman who doesn't need saving is a woman who can't be controlled. And that's the threat. Because immaturity is cozy, it's culturally accepted, but it's also a cage. The only way out? You have to look in the mirror and destroy the illusion. You have to ask, is this really who I am? Or is this who I was told to be? And are you willing to pay the price of growing up? Because make no mistake, the price is high. You either keep playing the game, or you burn the script. But here's where it gets deeper. Recognition isn't transformation. It's not enough to name the problem. You have to understand its roots. Why do so many women cling to immaturity, even when it no longer works? It's not just bad habits. It's not just bad parenting. It's generational trauma. Because female immaturity, for much of history, was a survival strategy. Before women had rights, they had to use what little leverage they had. Fragility, beauty, submissiveness. Those weren't weaknesses. They were currency. Being the girl, the princess, or the manipulator wasn't vanity. It was adaptation. And that strategy worked in a world where women had no autonomy. But the world has changed, and the game has changed. Yet the software, still running on version 1800, that's the real trap. Because growing up now means giving up an outdated form of power. It means saying goodbye to the comfort of victimhood. It means standing alone. And that's terrifying. Because maturity doesn't feel good. It doesn't give you a reward. It gives you a burden, the burden of ownership. You can no longer say, it's his fault. You have to say, I chose this. And most aren't ready for that kind of honesty. So what do? They adapt again. But this time into something darker. Victimhood becomes a brand. Blame becomes a philosophy. And empowerment becomes rage. A new mask. Same game. It's not about men, not about patriarchy. It's about refusing to evolve. It's about refusing to become your own source of safety. That's the real crisis. It's global. It's cross-cultural. It's intergenerational. Women searching for fathers and partners, for saviors in systems, for identity in chaos. And it's not their fault, but it is their responsibility. Because here's the truth. Maturity requires you to murder your own myth. The inner girl who believed love should be easy. The princess who waited for rescue. The sorceress who confused control with security. All must die. So something real can live. No masks, no fairy tales. Just the raw, unfiltered self. And that self, she is powerful. Not because she manipulates, but because she owns everything. Every mistake. Every wound, every step. So here's your choice. Stay asleep, play the role, get applause for being fragile, or wake up, face the fire, and be forged by it. But know this, waking up will hurt. It will rip away your safety net, shatter your illusions, and leave you exposed to a world that no longer bends for your weakness. But the reward? Freedom. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is more powerful than a woman who is free. But we have to go even further, because immaturity isn't just a block, it's a toxin. It infects decisions, relationships, potential. It keeps women trapped in cycles of sabotage, because there's a difference between being immature and being helpless. And then there's something worse, weaponized immaturity. Some women don't grow because they're scared. Others, because they've learned immaturity gets them what they want. Not just protection, power. The tears, the tantrums, the passive aggression, the silent treatments. These aren't signs of fragility. They're tools, calculated, intentional, and disturbingly effective. She cries not because she's hurt, but because it gets results. She rages not from trauma, but to shift blame. She pretends to be confused, lost, broken, because the world coddles the woman who appears to need saving, and society lets her. Because our culture still says, that's just how women are. No, that's how unchallenged women behave, and it needs to end. Because the longer we excuse immaturity, the more we enable cycles of dysfunction. The world doesn't need more princesses. It needs queens who rule themselves. It doesn't need sorceresses weaving illusions. It needs women who see clearly. And it doesn't need eternal girls. It needs grown women who can meet life's fire with grounded power. So if you're listening to this and something in you is waking up, don't run. Stand still. Feel the burn. Because that pain, that's your childhood self dying, and your real self, your powerful, conscious, whole self being born. Own it, and become the woman no one can manipulate, label, or control. Because you're no longer playing the game. You are writing your own script. And finally, you are awake.